And it's great to have you here tonight. And it's also great to have a special guest with us that we're going to be meeting just now. So I want you to give a big Diamante Beach Hotel welcome to Piyush Jani. Piyush, come and join me here.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Now, Piyush, where have you come from?
In case you're wondering, it's just water.
Just water. Good stuff. Piyush, where have you come from today for this event?
So I come from Cambridge in England. I live and work there.
And what's your job?
So I work as a surgeon. Mm-hmm. So I'm a consultant head and neck surgeon, which basically means I treat people who have cancers of the head and the neck.
Okay.
So everything above the collarbone, the clavicles, but not the eyes and not the brain.
Okay.
So everything else. So cancers of the throat, the mouth, the thyroid gland, all the glands, the sinuses, nose, all that sort of thing.
Wow. So Cambridge surgeon. But you weren't born in Cambridge. You were born somewhere completely different. Tell us a bit about your upbringing. Where did you grow up?
So we have to go south from here. Mm-hmm. We have to fly across North Africa, land at a place called Jomo Kenyatta Airport, which is in Kenya. And then we travel to the third largest country in Kenya called Kisumu on Lake Victoria. And then we catch a little bus from there, go north and west slightly, 26 miles from there, into a tiny village called Yala.
Wow, has anyone heard of that? No, okay. So quite different from Cambridge, I imagine.
Very, very different. So when I grew up, Yala at that time was just a dirt track with a few houses on either side. No running water, no electricity. Perhaps best of all, no school, which is great.
So no schooling, no education growing up. Wow. So how did you get, well, firstly, from growing up in Kenya to the UK?
So my mum is a third generation Indian living in Kenya. She went back when she was young to marry my father and brought him back to Kenya. Kenya at that time was a British colony. So there were lots of Indians there. India was also a British colony. So there were lots of people transferred there from India. And so we were just an Indian diaspora living in Kenya. And then next door, Uganda, there was a man there called Idi Amin. Now, some of you may have heard of him. Once Uganda got independence, Idi Amin one day woke up and gave all the Indians in Uganda 3 months to leave.
Wow.
And Kenya wasn't as overt as that, but the pressures were still on. So lots of things began to change even within Kenya. So my parents were there because of the political unrest, they were asked to leave. Again, they're left with nothing except the clothes they're wearing and 5 young children.
Wow. And how old were you at this stage?
I was 13 then.
So 13, you arrived in the UK. Whereabouts in the UK?
So initially we went to a place called Westbury in Buckinghamshire, only because my parents didn't know anything here, but they had some distant relatives in Westbury. So they went there first, so I went there.
And what were your first impressions of the UK coming to a very different context?
So we landed about 10 o'clock night. The sun was still up, which was interesting. In Kenya, sun comes up at 7, goes down at 7, no change throughout the year because we're quite near the equator. It doesn't change at all. Everything was gleaming and clean. And they had these stairs which moved. I'd never seen that before. It was, and things were different. So we grew up in this tiny, Westbury is a very, very small village. And we grew up there, and
Yeah. And the downside was, in Westbury, they did have a school.
Sadly.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't Westbury, but the nearest school was Buckingham.
Okay.
Which is, so we had to get a school bus to Buckingham.
Okay. And did you like school?
Do you know, yes and no. I loved school because I hadn't been to school before. And there was all this new stuff, and I was learning this stuff. And it was just fantastic. It was just, the teachers were very kind because when I came, I hadn't been to school, I couldn't speak English. And they were kind, and after school, I would stay behind, and they would teach me English as well. No, because there were only 2 people who were not white in that school. And this one couldn't speak English. He hadn't been to school, and therefore school can be quite cruel in those situations. And of course, you can imagine what happened. So that wasn't the nice part.
Yeah, so mixed kind of bag for you.
Yeah.
And did you have an ambition of what you wanted to do after school by this stage?
No, not at all. Initially, Westbury at that time had 2 different school systems. In England, you have a secondary modern, and those who are more able go to the grammar school. And of course, haven't been to school before, so I was put in the secondary modern school. My father wasn't very happy with that.
Okay.
So although I spent 2 terms there, he tested them, and he got me moved. But yeah, so I loved school. Then we were there for another couple of years before we moved up north. I had no idea what I was wanted to do.
So at what point did you then think about medicine as a career?
Yeah, so I did my A levels. I didn't know what I was going to do. Before that, we had work experience. And I went to a school which was, I always say, came 3rd in the league tables.
3rd?
3rd in the league tables, but 3rd from the bottom. And nobody went to uni. And so I didn't have any ambitions to go to uni at all. And work experience was, go to this little local hospital and work in the pharmacy. So I did that, just we had a 2-week work experience thing. I went there, and all day long in the pharmacy in those days, you didn't have counting machines for tablets. So you had to count them by hand. So that's what I did. I was thoroughly bored doing that. So one of the guys saw that I was bored. He said, well, why don't you just go next door? Because there's a dental department next door. And perhaps you might enjoy that a bit better. So I went there for a day, and I thought, yes, this is something I could do. So that was my first application. So I applied for dentistry. I went to study dentistry, and I became a dentist first.
Yeah, and where did you study?
London.
In London?
Guys, yeah.
And then after London, on to where next?
In terms of eventually?
So how did you end up becoming a surgeon?
Yes, okay. So I did dentistry first, but I didn't become a dentist as a practicing dentist. I worked in what's called maxillofacial surgery, which is surgery of the face and the jaws. So for example, hope it doesn't happen, but one of you had a car crash, you smashed your jaws, you would come to somebody like me, a maxillofacial surgeon. If you had abnormally shaped jaw, too big a jaw or too small a jaw, we could change shape and do stuff like that. So yes, I was involved in that for 2 years. I did maxillofacial surgery. And my second degree after that was medicine.
Okay. And where did you study medicine?
Again, guys, in London.
Great. And so I guess the lesson from this is no education to the age of 13, and then you end up a surgeon. So education before 13 is...
waste of time.
Fantastic. There you go. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But if you remember one thing from this evening... Now let's go backtrack a bit. What was your religion growing up?
So I grew up in a Hindu household. I was brought up as a Hindu. Even in this tiny village, Yala. So Hindu families would normally have a shrine in the home. And we had a shrine in the home. And you would normally light a little flame every evening to the gods, to the idols, and we would do that. You would usually chant a worship song, and we would do that. On a Saturday evening, there was no temple in this tiny village, but all the other few families who were also Indian would gather on a Saturday to have a bit more of a communal kind of worship and eat together. Again, we would do that. So, yeah, I grew up as a Hindu, a practicing Hindu, and I'm proud to be one.
Yeah. Now, coming to the UK, some point you started to interact and discover Christians and the Christian faith. Tell us about how that happened.
Yes, so this is between medicine, between dentistry and medicine, and I was working in a job in a hospital doing maxillofacial surgery. I was at a fairly junior level, what we call senior house officer. So there were two of us in this hospital, and we provided the hospital with 24/7 cover for this particular department. I mean, maxillofacial. So anything which came in through emergency or whatever, we were the first port of call there. And we would provide 24/7 cover, which meant we would work every day. And then one of us was on call in the evening as well. And that's basically what we were doing. And so when you do that, you get to know each other because you're working so closely and you know really well. What I haven't told you that the other person was a girl, and you do get to know each other, and you do become friends, and perhaps you become more than friends.
Okay.
And that's what happened.
Okay. So.
And she was the first Christian girl I'd met.
Okay. So this first interaction.
Yes. Do you know our first interaction? So different from me. You know, I have to say, if you'd met me at that time, you'd probably thought of me as somebody who's quite proud and arrogant. Things had come quite easy for me. I was bright academically. I was captain of my hockey and my cricket team. You know, I had lots of friends. I even had a new car, which at that age is so special. Yeah, so outwardly, you would have seen somebody, you know, fairly, you know, put together surgeon, you know, getting on with life, but proud, perhaps, proud of what he's done and achieved and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you asked me about the other girl. What she did, though, she made me realize that I also had a facade. So what you could see of me was all on the outside. Oh, this guy's, you know, sporty, you know, good at his job, you know, good academically and stuff like that. But there was a facade, and I just interacting with her because she had none of that. She was, I think, what I would call transparent. All she was, I could actually see, and she had something which I didn't have. She had integrity, and so it actually did make me realize actually that I'm living behind this. I'm portraying a picture to the world outside, but behind that, there is something else.
And then something happened, I guess, that made you come to that realization that was how you were living. Tell us about that.
So what I haven't told them, you know the story, but what I haven't told them is that the other person, who's a Christian girl, what I hadn't told her either was that I already had a girlfriend. So somehow I managed to acquire two girls at the same time.
So the facade thing was Very good. You're obviously very good at it.
So let me tell you what happened after that.
Okay.
We laugh, but what used to happen every Friday evening, this Christian girl who I was working closely with would invite me to her house, and after a busy week, you know, we would just enjoy a meal together, have a glass of wine together. And one evening, she invited me back to her flat and said, "Oh, I'm looking forward to this," as I always did. But on this occasion, I got there, and they were both there.
Ouch.
Can I say?
Awkward.
Can I say not one of my favorite evenings?
I bet not.
But there's a big but. We laugh, but actually it was a dreadful evening. It was an evening full of tears, an evening full of accusations. Piyush, how could you ever do this? Evening of anger, rightly so. It was a terrible evening at that time. So I went home that evening, and I couldn't sleep. I know that I made a mess of my life. In the morning, though, something happened which made me feel even more wretched, which is the Christian girl phoned me up and said, Piyush, we have to be professional, and for what you've done, I forgive you.
Wow.
And she did that out of the kindness of her heart to make me feel better. But actually, it made me feel even more wretched. It was dreadful. So, yeah. Shall I carry on? Or? Yeah. So,
I think we need to carry on, Piyush.
We're both watching with the clock at the back.
Don't worry about the clock. We can't leave you in this situation, Piyush. We won't sleep tonight if we finish here.
So I'll try and be brief. But I began to realize not only the only way you can get two girlfriends and make that work is to have a life full of lie after lie after lie. You tell a lie, another lie to cover it, and your life becomes full of deceit. And I began to realize there were other things in my life as well, apart from that, which just were so awful. And behind this facade was a man who didn't like himself when he looked in the mirror. He wanted to be something else. That girl who was so lovely was religious, so I thought I'd become religious. So I went back into my Hindu faith and thought I'll take that on even more seriously. Some of you may know about Hinduism. If you don't, you can please do ask a question afterwards. One of the things Hinduism has is a system called karma. Whatever good I do, good is done to me. Whatever bad I do, bad is done to me in this life or the life to come. And behind this facade was a lot of bad karma. So rather than Hinduism consoling me, it made me feel even more wretched. Then, to cut the story short, I was invited to not just one church, but two churches. I'd never been to a church before. I'd never read the Bible before. I haven't owned a Bible before as such. In the morning, I would go to one particular church. I would drive 13 miles to go to this church, and another 12 or 13 miles to go to another church in the evening. Church didn't make much sense to me. There was a lot of assumed knowledge in the church. Things used to happen. I'd never been to one, so I just normally followed what they did. So there was one particular Sunday morning which is significant though. There would have been lots of songs. I can't remember most of them. There would have been some readings and sermons. I haven't got a clue what they were. I can't remember any of those. Every time the people stood up to sing, I would stand up. If they sat down, I would sit down. When they sang, I wouldn't sing because I couldn't sing. But I would read the words though. I would read the words which they're singing while this was happening. And the last hymn of that particular Sunday service, I remember very clearly. It was a hymn written by a man called Timothy Dudley Smith called "Tell Out My Soul, the Greatness of the Lord." The first verse talks about undumbered blessings. What are these? I had no idea what he's talking about. Second verse talks about the deeds his mighty arm has done. Again, what arm? What deeds? What does this all mean? I have no idea. The third verse, there's a line in there which was as if it was written just for me. A line which has spoken to me, a hymn which has spoken to me more than anything before, or actually, even since. And that line just stood out. And this is the line. Proud hearts and stubborn wills are put to flight. Proud hearts and stubborn wills are put to flight. And this young man in that church realized he's incredibly proud, incredibly stubborn. And I went home that afternoon, and you can imagine what happened. Proud hearts and stubborn wills are put to flight, kept ringing in my head, time and time again. That evening, I went to the other church, and church at that time was so different. Normally, I would go in a corner and hide myself. I was anonymous, didn't know anybody at all. But that evening, as if the pastor out of hundreds of people, was speaking to nobody but me. Why is he picking on me tonight? It was a different experience. At that time, I used to also I just joined a group where you could ask questions and explore the Christian faith. The group was called Agnostics Anonymous, AA. And again, we haven't got time, so I won't tell you a lot about that. But I'll just say this. The very next day, the Monday after Proud Hearts and Stubborn Wills are put to flight Sunday, that's Monday evening, they were talking about something called the cross. I didn't know anything about the cross. And they would have told me lots of things about the cross. But 90% went just over my head. I didn't have a clue what they were saying. But the 10%, which I did understand, was the beginning of my Christian faith. That 10% said, Piyush, your karmas can be wiped away. Jesus died for your karmas. You can have a fresh start. So that evening, for the very first time, I went home, sat by my bed, kneeled by my bed, and prayed to Jesus for the first time. And I did a simple prayer. I didn't know what else to pray. I just simply said, Dear Lord, forgive me for the complete mess I've made in my life. Help me to live my life with you as Lord. And please help me day by day to walk with you. Didn't know what else to pray. I wanted to just, So 23rd of February, 1982. Cold February evening. This happened.
Wow, just over 40 years ago. There's so many more questions I'd love to ask you, but I've just got one for time. We're looking tonight at this question: what can Jesus offer me that no one else can? In a sentence or in 30 seconds, what would you say in answer to that question? What have you found Jesus has offered you?
30 seconds isn't fair, so I'll take a bit of 45 seconds, whatever. I could say lots of things. I could say something about the song Andy sang, giving us rest and whatever. But I will say this, that Jesus, who being so rich, there wasn't a richest person in the universe unlike him, became so poor. And on that cross where he died, he was the poorest man in the whole universe. He did that for me and for us. So that I, being so wretched, full of karmas, could be made rich in his forgiveness and his love with him there. Which is not just a joy, but also a model for me to live by as well.
Piyush, we so appreciate you sharing. And I'm sure if people want to know more about your story and ask you more questions, you'd be happy to chat with them afterwards for as long as you want. But can we show our appreciation? Thank you.